Hey everybody, welcome back to Screwball, a baseball podcast, your home for everything baseball. I'm your host Mike Lepre, here with my co-host Frank White.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, with the season right around the corner, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about a preview for the 2020 shortened season. We did some preview episodes early in our run. The first few episodes we did were some predictions to talk about this season, but with so much has changed since then, with the world and the season and players and everything in between, we thought it would be beneficial to talk about, what the 60-game season is going to look like. So we got a few topics here that we think we should cover, some discussions, and we definitely got some new opinions differentiating from our predictions episode. So why don't we jump right into it with why don't we talk about some teams that could benefit from this shortened 2020 season? I don't know about you, but I think the quote-unquote bubble teams that I think could, vie for wild card spots, I think are going to benefit the most. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a handful of teams that their percentages really go up for making the playoffs, and I think there's at least one team in every division. So I think, for me, I think this gives the Blue Jays a good chance to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Young team, they come out hot. Win a couple of games. You think you're good. You know what I mean? You get that momentum and make a trade or two maybe, and you're on your way. So I think the Blue Jays could benefit in the Central. I think it's really the White Sox, just because the White Sox seemed to be like a hot and cold team last year. So there's not much room for hot and cold.
Yeah,
it's kind of either hot or you're cold.
Yeah.
So I think that could help them. AL West. I think the Angels, obviously. I think a team that might struggle out there could be the A's, just because they usually get off to a okay start. Usually they're a little over 500 the first 60 games, 70, 80 games, and then they really take off. So they're not that they're bad, but they usually start just a little over 500. In the hunt, but more wild card hunt, and then all of a sudden they jump up and they're in the hunt for the division. So I think that they might have to watch what's going on there.
Yeah.
And the NL East, I think really any team really has a shot. I think the Marlins obviously don't really got much of a shot there, but Phillies, they have a tough go of it. The whole division has a tough go of it. But I think the Phillies have a good shot. Nationals, shortened season, more rest should help them.
Yep.
The Mets, they have a good team, but we'll see what they could do because it's still going to be the Mets. So they're still going to have some sort of, problems or issues or something down the line. Who knows? Yeah. But the whole division should be interested. Even the Braves, because the Braves have a few guys sit down.
Yeah.
And a younger team. So we'll see, what can happen in that division. NL Central, I think this really helps a team like the Reds. Just because they were supposed to be good this year, as me and you predicted. I just think that with a shortened season, it only takes a couple games. You don't have to be like, they have to be good a whole 162 games. As a young team, new pieces. You don't have to do that. You just got to be good for a stretch. That should be good for them. And then NL West for me, I think the Rockies. I really think the Rockies can make a push for the playoffs. I always kind of like the Rockies, but you don't got to worry about the cold weather starting the season, rain delays, which end up being double headers late in the season. That always hurts them. Also, the pitching has to be better than last year. It has to be. With a DH out there, really strengthens that lineup. You got Ian Desmond sitting out. He's usually a pretty good player, but he never really fit Colorado because he doesn't play first. He really can't play shortstop much anymore. Center field, he doesn't fit in the outfield. So you kind of get rid of a guy who just didn't fit in. Still a decent player, just didn't fit in though. Now you could do like Murphy at DH and McMahon at first, and Brendan Rodgers at second, Story and Arenado, Dahl, Blackman. They're going to be good.
Yeah, they got a good offense.
And the pitching's got to be better. Can't be any worse. So, I think it's really going to help them. I think they could sneak in and maybe make a wild card in the NL. So, I mean, those are the teams I think, like I said, I just gave you one in each division who I think really could help the most. With the shortened season, obviously, I think everyone's percentages for playoffs go up.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's got a shot right off the bat.
So I think you're in a pennant race from opening day. An actual pennant race.
Yeah.
Not like, you're always in the pennant race, but this is 60 games. So you win 5 games, start the year. You're right in the hunt.
Yeah.
Lose 5, you're out. You might, if you start the season 0-5 or 1-6 or 1-5 or something like that, your front office is already thinking about who you're trading away.
Yeah, you got to at that point.
You're 5-1, 6-1. The opposite. You're already thinking about who you could trade for.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a crazy season. Roster moves and who gets injured and stuff like that. So it should be exciting. But it's definitely gonna raise the percentages of teams outsiders looking in on a normal season. I think it raises that sneaky team that make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Or even, I think it's a really good chance at some ties at the end of the season. And some playing games to get to the one-game playoff, which we never really kind of seen. We've always been close, but never really seen.
Yeah.
I think this year gives us a real great chance at that.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, it's easy to be tied after 60 games. 162 is kind of hard to be tied after.
Yeah.
After 60, it's pretty easy.
I agree.
So, we might see 2 playing games just for the AL or just for the NL. You might have to play 2 playing games just to get to the one-game wild card, just to get to the AL or NLDS.
Yeah.
So it should be crazy.
Yeah, with 60 games, you don't really have much room of separation. 162 games, you see at the end of the season, the Orioles are 35 games out. You're not going to see that even with a team like the Orioles. So it's going to be interesting. The teams that I got down that you already mentioned, the Athletics, the Angels, the Mets, the Indians, the White Sox, like you said, the Blue Jays, hell, the Rays could make a run at the division. You never know. These quote-unquote, like we call them, bubble teams are really going to show what they got. And it's going to be interesting, especially a team like the Indians, who are right on the cusp of maybe being sellers. Who knows what that does for the franchise now? Are they going to be traders at the deadline, or are they really going to be in the hunt and looking to buy? It's going to really cause a lot of questions for franchises going forward. And I also think equally it could help the bubble teams, but I think, especially a late run in the playoffs, I think it's going to help the really good teams like the Yankees, Dodgers, Twins. I think that having fresh arms, Garrett Cole, Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty, these guys that are real good, they're going to be real fresh for the playoffs. It's going to help them a lot. I think that having fresh bats in the lineup, especially that Twins lineup, could be really beneficial. Having your bullpen arms real fresh, you could basically throw them as much as you want in the playoffs. So I think that the real good teams like that are going to benefit a lot. I don't see much benefit to the real bad teams other than causing problems. Like a team like the Orioles, Mariners, Marlins, Tigers, they're not really... I don't see them, even with the shortened season, really causing much problem, for making a chase the wild card division. But I think that they could play spoiler in a big way, especially when you see prospects coming up.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, I think you never know, though, because last year I think the Mariners started, like 13-1?
Yeah, they started hot, yeah.
Or something like that, 14-1.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, they're you go, oh, man, they got to start. But they know they have 162 games.
Yeah, so it's
kind of hard to kind of keep your head up. But you start 14-1 this year. You're
pretty
already
good.
a quarter of the way through the season. You're saying, hey, why can't we go make a wild card? And and then the big thing I think about is the stats for some of these guys. Like Jose Ramirez is usually a slow start guy. It's a slow start because it's April, it's cold. It's a slow start because you're not really in a pennant chase or into the season yet. Or is it just because he's not getting those, real game at bats? So we got to watch for guys like that, Granderson was kind of like that too. Throughout his career, being kind of slow start. And, they always said that the season really didn't start for a player stats until about May. Well, now, if you're going to say that case, you're already past the trade deadline, you're already a month into the season, I think the 60 games, I think it's going to help players because I think they're not going to look at their stats as much. Because if you have a bad year, you get 162 games to be bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that really messes up your stats. And if you're a stat person, some guys aren't.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are stat persons.
Yeah, it'll really weigh on you.
Stat people. Yeah, and it's gonna weigh on you, and you gotta look up there every single day and see it. You gotta hear about it every single day. And at the end of the year, let's say you had 2 years where you were 300, then you have a year where you bat 200.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that drags your average down because you had 160 games or 150 games or whatever you played. Now you had 60 games if you play all of them. So it's not really going to mess up your career average and for those guys who are stat people.
Yeah.
Your ERA is high. It's not going to mess up your career ERA that much because it's only 60 games.
Yeah.
So you have way less innings. So it's definitely easier to manage. So I think you might see people not really worry about their stats as much. Maybe a pitcher, goes at somebody a little bit more or, doesn't worry about walking 50 guys this year because he would have walked 50 guys if he pitched 200 innings.
Yeah, so what the hell?
Or a hitter, I'll bunt more. I'll worry about sac flies more. I'll worry about home runs because it doesn't matter if I hit 5 home runs this year. I can use it the fact that we only had 60 games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, you might see some difference in stats this year and the way that the players look at it. For the people that are stat people.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more stat people in baseball for the players now because there's some of the guys who are metric, sabermetric guys.
Yeah.
Then there's guys who are just the old stats guys. There's not many guys who are just like, I don't really, worry about my stats too much. I know I'll kind of be there. Not many guys like that anymore.
Yeah.
There's kind of two different stats, sabermetrics or, the old school. Stats obviously are really, I think, play a more important role in baseball than any other sport.
Oh, yeah.
But I think this year it's going to play a real difference in that.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point you brought up with, guys not worrying as much about it because it's only 60 games. So, if you're real hot, if some guy's batting 400, great, but it's not, 162 game season really like separates, the real good and bad players. Where with this season, you can see a guy batting 350, 400, and he's not typically, that high of an average guy, or you can see a guy putting up monster home runs or, monster RBIs or vice versa. You can see a guy that's real cold batting 100 or 150.
Yeah.
It doesn't really reflect. It could reflect, obviously, the player like someone like Aaron Judge or Cody Bellinger or these guys, but someone like, I don't know, Brian Reynolds or someone that's, not as in the stardom, it could really benefit them or be detrimental. But it's going to be interesting with contract talks with the statistics, like you brought up in previous weeks. It's like, you batted 200 last season. It's like, well, it was only a 60-game season. It's like, well, you still batted 200, So it's going to be interesting to see like a player like maybe Mookie Betts, see where that falls. It's just going to be interesting for the record books, where, someone could bat, like I said, 350, 400, have 25, 30 home runs or have a ton of RBIs, hundreds, who knows how many stolen bases at that point. So the statistics are going to be interesting, and I want to see what the conversation around those statistics are. It's not even batting statistics, too. We're neglecting that someone could have like a 0.5 bullpen ERA, or a starter could have a 0.8 ERA. It's like, we've seen 60-game stretches where guys did that. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to see some pitcher really come in and shut everyone down,
Yeah, and, it's just, you don't know what you're going to say. That's the big thing. You just don't know what you're going to see. And these players are, when it's August and you played 100 and something games already, going 2 for 4 isn't really going to mess with your stat. You go, 1 point, 2 points in the stats?
Mm-hmm.
You're playing your 30th game of the year. You're halfway through the season. You go 2 for 4. You might have went up 6 points.
Yeah.
So you always feel like you can turn your season around.
That's true. That's a good point.
And in a normal season, you kind of get halfway through, and your stats are, obviously halfway point. You can still have a big second half. But it takes a lot.
Yeah.
To raise your stats. Especially if you're down a ways. If you're down 10 points or so, it doesn't take much. But if you're down 50 points, 60 points, batting average, you got to go a long ways.
Yeah.
This season, you can look at 20 games in, 30 games in, and see, boy, I'm 100 points under my average. I have one good week. I'm literally at my average now. So, I just think the way that the players are going to see it, you might see, you just might see more team play, more bunting and more hit and runs and stuff like that, just because, they're not worried about their stats as much.
Yeah.
You don't think people's stats, that affect the game. It does, it really does. So, that should really change. And like I said, earlier with Jose Ramirez, you got players like that who start off slow or start off really hot. So we'll see. We'll see. Especially the young guys, not having as much experience and then coming up and not having, not gaining as much experience.
Yeah.
Or a young guy, a pitcher who's used to this. Because the minors and lower minors, you don't play a longer season. You play shorter seasons, so they might be more used to this than other guy, a veteran. So it's gonna be crazy to see exactly what they do for the stats and their awards, and are they gonna have all-star selections this year, even though the all-star game's canceled?
Yeah.
Because they put the Dodgers one in 2022. Next year's the Braves, but at the end of the year, did they at least give all-star? Did we vote on the all-stars?
Yeah, just even for just.
For their career.
Yeah.
For the fact that if there was an all-star game, you have the all-stars. Or we just skip that. Nobody's an all-star that year.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just no one gets it, or we still do the votes. It's that's interesting. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. So there's gonna be a lot of things to decide on, and a lot of players are gonna be, hurt by this, by the shortened season. I think some players can gain from it. If they have a good 60-game stretch. But a lot of people, just in the overall, scheme of things, it's going to be hurt by it. Guys like Judge and Sanchez and Baez and those guys who are in their 26, 27-year-old, 28 years Trout.
Yeah.
They're in their 26, 27, 28-year-old season. which is that real big year. You really have that big stretch in your prime there.
Mm-hmm.
And, it really could hurt them. A guy like Pujols, who he's chasing records, this could hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
Like a guy like Markakis, he's sat out.
Yeah.
He's, as of right now, he's sitting out. If they can come back at some point, who really knows? But, a guy who was, chasing 3,000 hits, it was a little bit in the future. But he was still chasing it.
Yeah.
And then a shortened season, you go, that kind of really hurts him. Now he's sitting out. That just about puts him out of 3,000 hits. Yeah. Does that put him out of the Hall of Fame? Or do they give him like the Harold Baines kind of thing where, he eventually gets in because he would have had it if it wasn't for this and that?
Mm-hmm.
Or do they get McGriff where, you don't think about the 94 strike and he missed 7 home runs from 500 and gets left out? So, it's a lot of things to think about. What this is going to cause is crazy.
It's a good point you brought that up because I actually wanted to bring that up. The veteran guys like Pujols and Markakis who are real close. I mean, Pujols is a Hall of Famer. At this point, it don't matter. He's just padding his stats at this point.
Yeah,
and, hopefully to get some more playoff runs in him. But, from the historic statistical standpoint, I mean, Pujols realistically could reach 700 home runs. Now, where does his total land at, in a season like this? And like you said, Markakis sitting out. I know you were big on watching his 3,000 hit, potential. That, like you said, just about puts him out of it, unfortunately, unless he really, how long he plays or how well he hits in those years.
Yeah, he had to do what he was doing, like 150, 160 hits. Now he has to go up to 170, 180 hits or play one more season. At 36 years old, having to sit out a whole season, does someone sign him next year?
Yeah.
It's these questions, they don't just impact this year or even next year. It impacts, the whole game, the whole, history of the game.
Yeah. And so, it's a good point you brought up, too, with McGriff. He just came those 7 home runs shy, and there was that 94 strike. In hindsight, could that have been just that little bit could have put him in the Hall of Fame? Say a player that ends up a similar career as McGriff, where he's just right on the cusp of being that Hall of Famer. Does this shortened season then, in hindsight, say, you're looking ahead to the future, could this really impact someone that's 27 right now, 28, a player that, not like maybe a player like Trout, who's probably going to be a Hall of Famer, but a player maybe down the line who stays steady and could be a Hall of Famer. What does this, what does it do to them? And then maybe bullpen arms, and maybe they lose saves, and they don't get to pad that save statistic to the end of their career. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and like you said, with guys like Trout, I mean, this was his big, he was running right into his prime season, and he's a guy who has missed some games with injuries, or a guy like Judge who has missed some games with injury. If you have missed no games with injury, or haven't missed really many, this doesn't really affect you too much because you can almost count it as like, I think I hurt that one year.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. You can almost, it's the same situation, I guess. But, it really affects because, as a guy who would have hit 30 or 40 home runs this year and all those 300 average and all that crazy stuff, now his, career numbers are always going to be, what if he played 60 more games a year, 70, 80 more games a year?
Yeah.
That's 100 hits.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe besides having 2,900 career hits, he ends up with 3,000, or maybe besides having 3,500, he ends up with 3,600. You don't know. You don't know where his career's going to end. So it really puts a big question mark on their career until at least when they're done, and then you can start asking those questions. Or a guy who hits 400 this year.
Yeah.
What would happen if he had 100 more games? You don't know.
Yeah. His batting average could drop to 298 or something like that. Have a good season instead of 400 average season.
Or a guy hits 30 home runs for 60 games.
Mm-hmm.
Is he chasing Barry Bonds' record? Probably not.
Yeah.
But
Realistically.
You never know.
Yeah.
It's always in the back of your head. He hit 30 home runs, 60 games.
Yeah, that's it. You never know. There's going to be those conversations. I have that even in my notes. There's going to be that conversation. There's going to be really hot players where people are going to say, hey, 60 games, if he had played a full season, where does he end up? Realistically, I think most baseball fans could know that 162 games you're going to get cold. Unless you really have a historic season, there's going to be the cold spells. So it's going to be from a statistical point, it's going to be interesting. So we talked about that, and we talked about the teams that could benefit, but I also want to talk about, we literally are recording this about an hour after they announced the 2020 season schedule. And we took a look at it. We didn't really delve too deep into it just because we're just still a little digesting it. What are your initial thoughts on the schedule? So what I have here as far as our notes is, like we knew, it's going to be 40 games against your division rivals, 10-10, 10-10. Your home road split is going to be 7-3 or 6-4. And your interleague rival games are going to be 6 games against your natural interleague rival, then two teams, you get 4 games and 4 games, and the other 2 teams is 3 games and 3 games. So what are your initial thoughts on how the schedules are looking? And I mean, are there any teams that you think could benefit, like right off the bat? Your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago where we brought this idea up where they were kind of rumoring playing your rival in the National League. I don't like it, just because it was so simple just to split it up and make everything easy. Teams like the A's, cool. They played the Giants 6 times this year.
Yeah.
Team like the Angels played the Dodgers 6 times this year. What's that do to them? What's it do for the A's? Team like the Nationals go play the Orioles 6 times this year. What does that do for them in that hard division? 2 hard divisions. The Mets got to play the Yankees 6 times. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, I like the idea. Oh, you wanted to get natural rivals, and you get to see the Mets and the Yankees, and this is pretty much the exact same thing I said weeks ago. You get to play, the Battle of Ohio, and the Beltway series, and the Freeway series, and the Windy City series, and all them crazy series. The Cardinals Royals. But when you break it down, you go, wow, they had 2 games against a team that they are going to beat most times or not. In a 60-game season, obviously, 1 game could be huge. So a team like the A's gets away with it. A team like the Angels gets beat up for it. But then again, a team like the Angels, what if they go in and beat the Dodgers 4 out of 6?
Yeah. Or
5 out of 6. What does that do for them?
For the Dodgers.
Does that get them, going? Or, they come in to lose, and it wipes their season. You go, well, we had 1 less game against those tough guys. We might, 2 less games against them. We might be in the hunt.
Yeah,
so
can make that much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, and I think it really could hurt the fact that trading. Because usually you go, the Yankees Mets don't trade against each other that much. They don't ever really trade with each other. But the Yankees and Phillies. Well, you might not trade it with the Phillies now if you're the Yankees because you got to play them.
That's a good point. Yeah.
The Marlins. Yankees made multiple trades with the Marlins. Did they trade with them this year? They got to play them. They got to end the season with them. So, a lot of teams got to look at that too. Compared to just be like, we don't trade in our division. Any other division, we don't really worry about too much. Unless you're the top team and you're in the hunt, it might be a little different. Other than that, you don't worry about unless it's a division team. Now you got to worry about, well, do I trade him one this year and be like, I see him this year. That hurts me this year, maybe. But next year, I don't really have to worry about it. Or do you go, I'm not trading with them this year, but maybe next year I'll trade with them.
Yeah.
So it changes everything. Changes the whole way your front office, everything.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's going to be interesting to see because you can really spell out a team's schedule just purely based on their division. And I think the Central divisions are going to be really interesting because I think the NL Central at this point could be just about up for grabs. I think the AL Central could get real interesting. So those Central teams, all AL and NL, are going to have they're going to be ones that I want to watch. I think the West is going to be a little complicated. I think the West could get a little muddy, but I think your clear good teams are still present in those divisions. I think the East, my initial reaction to the Yankees schedule was, wow, I mean, the last half of their season is, they're just going to walk to the playoffs, it seems. But like you said, who knows with a team like the Blue Jays or the Rays could cause a little bit of problems. Who knows, hell, with the Red Sox. You never know.
And you know what? Who knows with the Orioles? Just because you start off the season, you win 6, 7 in a row or something like that, or like we said earlier, 6 out of 7. Hell, we're in it.
Yeah.
Who cares how bad we're supposed to be? We only got to be good for 50 out of 60 games. You sneak into the playoffs, and who knows? And it gives you that underdog story. And then if you're a team like the Yankees, the Braves, maybe the Nationals, you're almost scared.
Yeah.
The Dodgers, especially the Dodgers. That one year they started off terrible. You're almost scared because you got to be good. You only have 60 games to do good. 162 games, you're eventually going to be good.
Yeah.
Everything kind of rolls over for the most part. 60 games, you could not be good for 60 games. A couple bad weather games, and all of a sudden a couple double headers, and, one injury. You go, well, we were supposed to win the World Series this year. We're being hunt for it, and we missed the playoffs. But a team like the Orioles made the playoffs.
Yeah.
What does that do for next year? You come back just pissed off, and you come back next year going, we lost to the Orioles.
Yeah.
What does it do for them next year?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a crazy season. Really gonna be a crazy season. But season. So can't really complain about that.
Yeah, we got something.
I know a big thing too that you kind of kept mentioning. The minor league season. It's done.
Yeah, officially.
It's wiped out. What's that do? What's that do to them?
Yeah.
The whole minor league system, the MILB, I believe is
Yeah.
MILB, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
What's that do to them? Does that bankrupt a lot of these teams? Is that the final push for baseball to MLB to kind of cut the minor league teams? Because they've been fighting with that.
Mm-hmm.
If they cut teams, they raise the players' salaries up a little bit. Hopefully.
Yeah.
But you got to cut teams. So what's that do? And what's that do for the future of the game?
Yeah.
Not just, where do you put some of these minor leaguers? That's less players in the minors. Means less players on teams, which means some of these good players who had never got thought of or seen in their careers, what happens to them?
Yeah.
They just fade off and go live, a normal life,
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think about. Some of these guys, could go missing almost.
Yeah.
Your Mike Piazzas who were drafted 900th pick and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's a lot, this whole thing's going to cause, a ruckus.
Yeah.
That's really what it's going to do.
I agree.
Yeah. I just hope baseball, they got all the bad out of the way. They pushed every wrong button. For
Literally.
Like 6 months. Like every single one. So now that I think the game's kind of back, everything's kind of on track, they're going to be the first four major sports back. Maybe they can kind of slow things down and start pushing the right buttons. Just slowly kind of be like, okay, this is what we need to do. Get the marketing out for players, start getting sponsorships in, really start marketing the game. So hopefully they get past this, get the CBA nice and easy, and just kind of start marketing these guys and really make baseball grow. But, it starts with obviously making the right choices, pushing the right buttons.
Yeah, it's a good point. I didn't even think of all that could happen with the minor league stuff, especially what could happen with the communities that could lose these minor league teams and these minor league stadiums and the
money.
Revenue from that.
Yep, the money.
So that's
and the
another
money they put in. That's the big thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you just built a new minor league stadium.
Mm-hmm.
That's not said they're huge stadiums, but especially higher up, they're pretty good money.
Mm.
What happens if that team leaves now? Well, the taxpayers went up a little bit to pay for that stadium, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna keep paying for it for nothing. What happens to it? You just destroy it. Let's say it was built 2 years ago. Now you just knock it out.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many questions that MLB and cities and states and stuff like that got to decide on.
Yeah.
That no one really thinks about.
Yeah, and they're not easy decisions.
No.
These things don't just happen.
Yeah, and no one really thinks about it until all of a sudden you're like, what are we gonna do? We don't got the money to pay for this. We don't even have a team to pay for. What are we doing with this? It's gonna be a big mess.
Yeah.
That part of it, the minor league part of this, is gonna be a big mess.
Mm-hmm.
The MLB part is gonna be an exciting mess.
Yeah.
A good mess, I should say.
Yeah. It's be like a slow-moving train wreck. You
don't
can't look
really,
away.
You don't really have to worry about it too much because you're gonna have baseball. But the lasting impacts of what it could do to the minors and the progression of the game is scary.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And losing the World Baseball Classic this offseason coming up.
Yeah, that's a
huge because that's big. A lot of people like that.
Yeah,
and that grows the game a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you never seen guys wearing an Australia hat before, or Netherlands hat or something. And then all of a sudden you see a couple guys on there and you start watching them, and liking them because of that or whatever. It grows the game. It's just more baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it personally.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
I always liked it too. Especially you get to see some of these older players that might be on the fringe. I mean, I remember Bernie Williams. I think he was retired and he played in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cool to see him play again.
Yeah.
But losing that, so baseball really got to start making right decisions and really help grow the game. So that's going to be big this season. It's going to be huge this season. I think that's going to be really that's 1B. 1A was getting the season. 1B is how much you can grow from it because you can't lose. You can't lose fans.
Yeah.
And you can't lose money and stuff like that, obviously, but you got to be able to market the game. And they got to start doing that now. Otherwise, they're really going to fall even farther behind, which could really hurt the whole sport.
100% I agree with just about everything you were saying there. The last thing, though, that I would like to bring up about this shortened 2020 season, our little preview here, what does this do to our original predictions overall? And if you want a little reminder of what our predictions were like, so we both had the Yankees winning the AL East, the Rays getting a wild card. In the AL Central, we both had the Twins winning it. In the West, we had the Astros winning it. In the NL East, we both had the Braves. On the NL Central, I believe we both had the Cardinals. And the NL West, we both had the Dodgers. So I believe you had wild card teams. I believe you had the Phillies and the Reds and the Rays and the A's. Does this change any of your predictions overall? Or do you think it's going to be, even with a 60-game season, it's mostly going to end up the same way?
I think it's going to end up pretty similar. I think a team you got to watch the A's because, like I said, sometimes they start a little slower than they could. So you got to watch them. I think a team like the Rays could get hurt by it a little bit, especially if they can't get over that Yankee hump like they did last year.
Yeah.
You don't have 50 games, 20-something games against them.
And it seemed like their games are going to be earlier in the year. It's not like the Rays are really going to be able to control their own destiny at the end.
They only had a couple wins against them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say they go 2-8. 2-8 this year. Well, now you got to go 8-2 against somebody else. Just make up for it.
Yeah.
And what's that team going to be? Maybe the Mets or the Nationals. You know what I mean? You can't just really beat up on a bad team. You're not going to play them 20 times. There's teams like that. I think it's going to be pretty similar. I think that the White Sox might make a bigger push. I think the A's you got to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the NL, I think you have a better shot at the Nationals.
Yeah.
Being better, and the Mets, but the Mets are Met. So Reds, I should say true. I think the Reds might win the division out there. Can't count the Cardinals out.
No,
I'm never gonna count them out. I don't care if no one shows up; they still got a shot. And like I said, the Rockies.
Yeah.
I think they got a shot this year to make a wild card. But you're gonna see a surprise team for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Somewhere, and I think you're gonna see at least a play-in game this year to get to the one-game wild card, to get to the ALDS or NLDS.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be exciting. So I know some talks with some of the owners about possibly some fans in the seats at some point.
That'd be nice.
So that'd be cool.
Yeah, it depends on the state, I guess, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's going to be. My predictions are pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just got to, I'm going to be watching. You're going to be a little bit more scared for some of these teams like the A's, the Rays. A team like the White Sox could jump in. A team like the Rockies could jump in. But, it's just it's a big who knows.
Mm-hmm.
And we just seen it before. The miles you got to travel.
Yeah.
You're in the Central, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, you're not traveling.
Everyone's
really
right there.
Yeah.
The Brewers were like 3,200 miles or something. What's that?
It's like half the country.
Yeah, people do that.
Mm-hmm.
On their commute in 2 weeks. Whatever they do. Some people crazy,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they do. But then you got teams like, out west, the Angels or
Seattle.
Or the Astros or something like that. They might have to travel 15,000 miles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's that do?
Yeah.
And what's the odds that raises their chance of maybe one guy getting sick, or something like that? So you never really know. Then you got a team, I think it was like the Padres, they said that they leave the state of California once in like the last month and a half of the season or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They don't go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's going to play a big effect too.
Yeah.
No West Coast road trip. Not as long as home stretches. You used to have 10, 12-game home stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Now you might have a 6-game home stretch. Might be 6 or 7, might be your longest. So you're kind of always up going.
You don't get to settle in.
Yeah, no rest.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be no rest. There's no because, it's 60 games. You're in independent race.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially from an injury perspective. One guy goes down, midway through the season. Could that be it? Could that be it for his season? Could it be it for at least the rest of the regular season? Could it leak into the playoffs? I mean, that's going to be an interesting wrinkle, too, because people are getting hurt. I mean, it's still, they're still playing games. It's that people are going to, they're quad or it's going to be something stupid or, the arm could be sore, stuff like that. Or are they going to have to now play through some of that stuff? It's going to be interesting, too. So I think, overall, I think my predictions are going to stay relatively the same. I think we both agree on most of the real good teams and then, the good teams. The only thing I'm all in on is the A's. I think the A's could take the division now. If they get out to a hot start, they're starting right in the heat. I think that could help. That's really going to help everyone, I think. No one's starting really in the cold. But I think the A's are good enough to where they could take the Astros for the division. Don't get me wrong, the Astros are still good. But I just think that the A's are that sneaky team that I think could do something. I think, like you said, the White Sox could really make a run. I think the Reds, this helps them immensely. Like you said, I think they could win the division. The NL Central. The Brewers, the Cubs could do something. That whole NL Central really is interesting to me.
Who knows? The Pirates? They got a bunch of young guys.
Yeah, the Pirates are sneaky.
Managers and stuff going on out there. You never know.
Yeah, you never know, which is what I kind of do like that. But like you said, there's a lot of pressure on the real good teams, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Braves. There's a lot of pressure on them to do what they're supposed to do, And with 60 games, I don't expect the Yankees or the Dodgers really to be out of the mix, or the Braves or the Twins. I think they're still a good team's a good team, and I think that's going to show. But it would be interesting if, say, a team like the Dodgers or the Twins got cold, and all of a sudden, here's the Indians or the White Sox winning the AL Central, or hell, the Padres or the Diamondbacks or the Rockies winning the West. It'd be super. I'd love it. I mean, from a baseball fan perspective, a neutral baseball fan perspective, I would love anything like that. But overall, I think my predictions, I still think the good teams are going to be the good teams, and I think the bad teams are still going to be the bad teams. But you never know with hot and cold streaks. That's kind of the beautiful thing about the season. You never know. That's all I got as far as my notes here and what we wanted to talk about. I mean, is there anything you think we missed? Is there any player or franchise or really any topic that you think that we didn't cover here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a decent amount of players opting out.
Yeah, that's an interesting wrinkle too.
Which can affect some teams, and what impact that has on some of these teams. Because imagine who it is.
Mm-hmm.
The Braves. Nick Markakis. That's a big veteran piece.
And Felix in the Braves.
Yeah. Not being in the clubhouse and whatnot. So, or are they able to come back later on to decide, they want to play, as long as they're before the September 15th. So a lot of things are going to happen. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Players aren't going to be used to the fans not in stands and, no one cheering at them and less interviews and stuff like that. So it's going to be crazy. It really is, but baseball.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a season. We're gonna have some crazy moments, and we're gonna have a World Series champion at some point. So. And
that's another thing too. I mean, I'm sure the other fan bases around baseball and just baseball fans in general, whoever wins that World Series, in their heads it might be like an asterisk, unless it's a team that everyone loves, like maybe the Indians win it and break that streak. If a team like the Yankees win it, all hell's going to break loose.
But they're a one-of-a-kind World Series. You're
That's
only
true.
one to won a 60-game World Series. You're only one to won a coronavirus World Series, the shortened season.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say, as an asterisk, but I think it's going to be harder. It's harder on the teams.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta be good.
Mm-hmm.
You can't mess up. Oh, we weren't good that month.
Yeah.
If you weren't good that month, you're not going to be playing the next month, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's about half the season.
Yeah. So it's going to be crazy. It's really going to be crazy. But other than that, I think we pretty much touched on everything.
Yeah, because it's a lot of questions. We haven't seen anything like this, at least in our lifetime, a little before us in '94. Obviously people lived through that and seen that shortened season, but this is completely different even from that, because this is the finish to the season. That was just the start to the season.
This you have an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
That there was no answer.
Yeah.
It was just like, well, we're done.
Yeah.
They called the players and were like, we're not playing anymore, so go home.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're like, hey, we're playing, so come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be a hell of a season.
It may even attract more fans because it's the first sport that's going to be on TV out of the big four, and B, a lot of people complain with baseball being boring and there's too many games and it's a lot to follow. With 60 games, it's pretty digestible to the average sports fan that's not a baseball fan. I think that you can keep track of each team a little easier. I think that it's just going to be great. I think people are just, even if they're not baseball fans, it's just going to be great to watch some sport out of the big four, obviously, because NASCAR is still doing stuff in golf and all that. But I think that even with all of the horrible stuff that was going on with the negotiations, it was really looking bleak for a while. I think that baseball could come out on the other end of this a little bit more beneficial, at least in the eyes of the public, in the eyes of non-baseball fans.
Yeah.
I think it could really help.
And every fan base is an independent race.
Yeah.
So that's got to pump you up. If you're an Orioles fan, you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a Tigers fan, you're in it. Might see some young guys, You can't expect, here comes 162 games of, we might win 40 of them.
Yeah, and you're vaguely interested.
Yeah, you won 40 games out of 162. That's not very good.
No.
This year you win 40 games, you're probably going to finish top of the division. So, it should bring excitement to all fan bases, which is great. But they just got to figure out a way to keep that.
Yeah.
And like I said last week, the blackouts, that's, beyond me why you would do that. But, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But, we'll see what baseball can do. They're going to, And if they can, I know the testing has been a little crazy so far, but if they can really prove to these players that we want to play, we care about you, we care about the fans, we care about the game. We made these rules, we made this testing, we made all this system, and it all works. It all works good after these first little, bumps, which obviously are going to happen.
Yeah.
And they can prove to the players that, we know what we're doing. We can put something together. Does that rebuild that relationship between the players and the owners and, the front offices? Does that really help the CBA in the coming years? Does that help the fans who are like, it's all about money?
Yeah.
And baseball kind of lose that all about money mantra. So it's more about, just these 60 games. That's what people got to understand.
Yeah.
It's a lot more about more than these 60 games. It's the impact it's going to have on baseball for the next, who knows, 30 years. And that's what we really got to look at.
Yeah.
It's a lot of as much as on the field as off the field.
Yeah.
So
well said.
We'll see.
Why don't you hit us with the trivia question you got for us this week? I think that's about all I got. On my end.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I got. But trivia questions is always, of course, it's the best part of the whole show, right? This week's trivia question, as you can see on our Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff, and we answer it. A little reminder: we answer it on every week's podcast. Obviously, is how many pitches is the lowest amount for a complete game, and that will be history.
It's ridiculous.
So, whatever number you could think of it's going to be lower than that. So, so the answer was on August 10th, 1944. Charlie Red Barrett pitching for the Boston Braves against the Cincinnati Reds. He won 2-0, gave up 2 hits. He threw a 58 pitch complete game, 58 pitches.
It's ridiculous.
And the game lasted an hour and 15 minutes.
Rob Manfred would be creaming his jeans thinking about that.
Yeah, baseball would they would love that.
Yeah.
But 58 pitches. Can you imagine that?
That's.
Hey, hell, he pitched next day.
Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah, he's fine. He's all right.
That's
pitch
like
next day.
Yeah, that's like a really long relief outing. It's not even like.
Yeah, give him one day off and pitch him next day. That's like Little League.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could throw like 40-something pitches. Little League, pitch like 2 days later.
Yeah.
This guy,
he's good to go.
Yeah, he's good to go.
Especially back then when they were pitching just about every day.
Yeah,
it
throwing
didn't
150 pitches.
Yeah.
He'd do 50.
Yeah.
58. Like, are you
dominant?
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he gave 2 hits.
Yeah. What the hell?
I don't even. He gave 2 hits. He's all right.
Yeah. Definitely pitching to contact. There couldn't have been many walks and strikeouts in that game,
And obviously, especially back then, pitch counts were a little not as recorded. Especially, I think before the 40s, they really didn't record them that strictly.
Yeah.
So, this number could vary a pitch or two here or there, but this is what's recorded. This is, the actual, what they say. But 58 pitch complete game. So I don't think we'll ever see that again.
No. Greg Maddux tried his ass off that one start.
You said that Greg Maddux was like anything under 100.
Yeah.
For a complete game. He used to be like 90, like low 90, 92, 93. And they were like, that's a Greg Maddux. That's what they call it.
Mm.
Now, anytime someone throws a complete game under 100, they're like, that's a Greg Maddux.
Yeah.
Well, this guy threw 158 pitches.
Yeah, and half that.
Yeah. He wasn't even warmed up yet.
Yeah.
So.
What the hell?
But, that's this week's trivia question. So.
It was a good one. I had no idea. It was too low for me to guess. I was guessing 70s or something.
The number I knew because I've seen it, places before, video games and stupid stuff like that. I've seen it. So I kind of knew the number, 58, 59, something like that. Pitcher, I couldn't tell you.
No,
it was all new to me. So
I couldn't guess that. No way. Anything before really the 50s or 60s, I can't.
But the pitch number, I kind of knew it was 50 something. I couldn't remember exactly. But yep, 58 pitch complete game.
It's ridiculous. I wish I could do that.
Can't even do that in MLB if I put on like beginner.
No, put it on rookie and throw it all the down the middle. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. I don't think you can even do that in a slow pitch softball game. 6 inning slow pitch softball game. I think that'd be close.
Yeah. Yeah. At that point, yeah.
So
it puts that in perspective. How ridiculous that.
Yeah. So that's.
All right. Well, I ran out of notes, and I think we covered just about everything here. Is there anything, just final thoughts, final notes, anything you want to bring up real quick?
No, we already said last week, I wished everybody happy Independence Day. So I hope everybody had a good Independence Day. July 4th, it was a pretty good weekend here for us.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Obviously, with some things opened, we're a little luckier here. State is a little bit more open, but I hope everybody had a good weekend. and we're excited for baseball to come back on.
Yep.
So we'll have some more stuff. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah, we only got a few more episodes to go before we can start talking our regular stuff about baseball every week. So,
but we'll think of something.
Yeah, we'll fill the time in.
Yeah, because we'll think of something. We'll think of something good.
Yeah.
We'll have, of course, another great trivia question
to
add to the show. So.
As always.
Yeah, of course.
All right, guys. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Quick reminder before we go, you can catch this podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can catch it on Google Podcasts and Spotify. You can also catch the podcast at our website, screwball.podbean.com, every week, as well as our regularly uploaded YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter at Real Mike Lepre. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lepre.
And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at FDubs10.
Give the official Screwball Twitter a follow at ScrewballPod. You can follow our official Facebook at ScrewballPod, no E in Screw. And that's it from us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep, take care.